Jarrod Loadholt is here. I'm gonna pick his brain about money, but we were talking about this government and this administration in particular, and all of the things it's doing and not doing. Let's get some good news in. What is working, Jarrod?
Well, I mean, look, you just had a $1.2 trillion infrastructure package that passed, right? And I think, a lot of the reporting, I don't think was really good, quite frankly, in the media, because they didn't tell you what was in it, right? Like 1.2 trillion is a lot of money, right? So number one, it's like, well, what is that going to do? And I think there's a legitimate question as to what does that do for Black people, right? And so, I'll pull out a few items that I think are worthwhile, right? And I think we should be talking more about than we have to date, right? So you got $65 billion in broadband infrastructure, right? Which I think a lot of us knew. Well, where do you all think broadband connectivity is the worst, right? It's going to be in our communities, right? By and large.
Well, we saw that during COVID with the Zoom and the children, that our children, Black children in particular, in inner cities were hit particularly hard and not being able to connect.
Right. So the issue in inner city, a lot of our urban core is not that we don't have the fiber in the ground, right? But that we have the fiber but can't afford the monthly payment, right? So there's a big chunk of this $65 billion that goes to an FCC program that would essentially subsidize and pay for people's internet, right? That will cover that bill, right? For a lot of people that I don't think we've talked about nearly as much. So, I mean, that's one, right? That's one thing that will disproportionately benefit many of us, right? The second piece is what's called middle mile infrastructure, right? So you can go to a lot of communities where they have the skeleton in place for the fiber, but the fiber doesn't really get to their neighborhood, right? So I'll give you an example. You have a place like, let's say, Baltimore, Maryland, right? Where it's like, yeah, of course, Baltimore has lots of fiber. It's a major city. All the things are downtown. But once you go to some neighborhoods in the outerlying areas, that fiber from road to curb may not exist in areas that are either less dense or lower income, right? So middle mile kind of fills in those gaps. The big part of this money, and I think this is really important for us to understand, is these are large, so about 45 billion of the money over 5 years will go to states to build out infrastructure in under or unserved areas, right? And so that's rural America. I'm from Orangeburg, South Carolina. My family's from Calhoun County, South Carolina, and Hampton County, South Carolina. Very rural areas that are majority Black. And the internet is really bad, right? I don't know if anybody's ever spent time in some of these areas, but these folks need help too. They need internet too. So this is a big pot of money that absolutely will and should go right now. Again, this is the
let's sit there for a minute, Jarrod, because as you're talking, I think some of us take things for granted because we don't experience it, right? So it doesn't even cross our minds. And I feel like it's the reason why we're not served by Congress, because we have so many millionaires in Congress that they're out of touch with what the average citizen even has to deal with. But you're talking about something. Drew McCaskill talks about it too. His parents are from this, Mississippi, but they're in an area where, and they're not poor, right? No. But so it has nothing to do with your income or your poverty level, more to do with where you are in the world and in this country. And what is the impact of not having stable internet? What is that?
Well, one, the ability to work from home. I think that for people who'd like to be able to do so, it's very difficult to do that if you don't have a stable internet connection. Number two, you got kids who may need to learn virtually for any of a number of reasons, right? Like, though most schools are in now, you still need internet to do your homework. And, there are countless stories where, you got kids in rural America who they go to the McDonald's parking lot or the library parking lot, and hopefully they can catch the Wi-Fi on their laptop, right? Like, that's a problem. And I think a lot of times when we talk about what Black America needs, there's a very urban-centric focus to it, as if Black folks don't live in these rural areas too, right? And I'm one of them, right? Like, I'm very much a rural Black American, and that's where I'm from. And I can tell you that, there are folks who have, my parents live in Orangeburg, right? Their internet is not great. I know they'll be like, our internet's fine. I'm like, no, it's not, right? Because I have good internet every day, because I live in Metro Atlanta and I see what this difference looks like between a place like in Decatur, where I am right at this moment, And when I go to Orangeburg, and Orangeburg's actually fairly urbanized for a rural area. Once you go out to other parts of Orangeburg County or other parts of South Carolina or Mississippi or Alabama or Louisiana or Arkansas Delta, you go to these places and no, you don't have consistent access, or if you do, it's very expensive, which makes it cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So, again, that's just one corner of the bill. We've not talked about.
And let's pause here again, because you're talking about $45 billion of a $1.2 trillion bill is going to ensure everybody has an internet or working, connection. How long is that going to take, do you think? Because again, it's still the government.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. Oh,
and who, and so here's another fundamental question, Jarrod, and I'm a compound question asker. Are there opportunities for are there Black owned internet, people that
Yes.
work on these lines? Like,
Yes.
Is this going to provide
Yes.
jobs for us
Yes.
in these areas?
Yes. So yes, right. And you have companies that do it's construction work. You're actually putting fiber in the ground, right? And I think this is kind of where I know we spend a lot of time talking about what Joe Biden or what Congress does. We don't talk nearly enough about state and local leadership, right? Because at the end of the day, the money will flow from Washington. A lot of the money, the biggest pot of broadband money, will go to states. And then from the states, it'll go to local governments and so forth that will apply for the money to do the projects. Here's a question. Does your local government have a minority business participation requirement for public contracts? They should. If they don't, they should. And this bill is a potentially generational spend in Black construction companies too, minority construction companies.
All right, pause there again. Jarrod Loadholt is here. And this is how we should be sussing out all of this instead of just, infrastructure. Jarrod Loadholt. If I live in a place that is internet insecure,
right?
Who do I petition or who do I call to find out what the process is for getting that money to the place? Because I think about Flint, Michigan all the time. Something was done to them on a local level that the governor sanctioned, and their water source got changed. And most of those Black people didn't know that was happening and what that would mean. And they didn't have a say in it. And it's not their fault. They just didn't know.
Right.
Walk us through how we empower ourselves in this moment. This is going through, that money's coming. Yes. Who does it go to? Is it the governor? Is it my local electors, my aldermen, my city council? And do I need to show up to the meeting? Like, how do I get the information about the internet, and the jobs that I need?
So in a rural community, that's very likely going to be your county government. And in most rural communities, your major infrastructure projects are going to flow through your counties. So that's going to be a county manager. I would say if you live in a rural community, your county manager not only knows this money is coming, but should also be in the process now kind of developing the project list for where that money is going to go. So that elected county commissioner or so forth, that race you may or may not have been paying attention to is really important now around this particular question. For if you live in a city though, right, very likely, you're going to have a mayor or someone who is applying directly from the state to do these broadband projects, and they're going after these dollars. So again, now that's another elected level of elected leadership where a mayor is or city manager, depending on the structure of government in your city, they know that this money is coming. So again, I'll give you an example. City of Atlanta has probably the gold standard for minority participation, and they've created an entire class of Black millionaires on construction projects, right?
Hey, Maynard Jackson. Thank you, Maynard Jackson.
Right? Like this is what that leadership looks like. I know, Mayor Woodfin in Birmingham, one of the things he's doing, he's going to spend $100 million in his second term with minority-owned business. And it's Birmingham, so it's going to be Black folks, right? So these are going to be the projects, and that's the level of leadership that I think you've got to target for that money and where that money goes. And yes, you absolutely have our firms, but you've got to have something written in law, right? Because otherwise, like, it may or may not happen, right? You've got to actually say, look, every contract that comes out of this jurisdiction, city or county, X% of it at least has to go to minority-owned firms, right? Like, that's how you do it. That's how Atlanta did it. That's how a lot of other cities did it. Washington, D.C., I think it's another Marion Barry, right? You're seeing these kind of legacy issues pop back up, right? And so I think that's how we capitalize on that. And again, this infrastructure bill is infrastructure for airports, which are federal property, have to have minority participation, right? They've got $25 billion for airport improvements. That's a lot of money, right? You got water and sewer projects that are flowing from EPA, primarily from the EPA to state environmental agencies and public health agencies through their revolving loan funds. And those dollars will then go to local governments who again are doing water, sewer, flood mitigation projects, so forth and so on. So it really is, I think, incumbent upon your local leadership, but also, man, you've got Black state legislators. They need to be asking those questions that, hey, state agency X, what are we doing to ensure that this historical amount of money is actually getting into the hands of folks? And we haven't even started talking about workforce development yet. So again, none of that's Washington. Washington's already kind of done their job by and large by making the money available and putting it on the street. We've got to have state and local leadership step up too.
All right. What else is in this that will impact us? And I thank you for that. And everyone should know who their county commissioner is, their county
manager, county commissioner levels. There's always some elected legislative body at the county level who should be ensuring politically that these things happen. Administratively, there's almost always some kind of county COO, county manager. DeKalb County in Georgia has a CEO, but in many cases, a county manager. And they usually have a bird's eye view of where this is happening.
Okay. All right. And to be honest with you, I don't know who my county manager is. I know who my representative is. I know who my senators are. I know my governor, of course, but these are the people that are going to make the decisions. We should know who they are, and we should have their email addresses, and we should show up to these county commissioner meetings to find out, or to ask the question, where's the money going?
Right.
Who's getting this money?
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What else is in this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that we should care about?
Roads and bridges, kind of the basics, ports, again, another resource I don't think we talk a whole lot about. And again, this is workforce related. At the end of the day, how many cities are large populations of Black folks in proximity to a port? Port Arthur, Texas, Mobile, Alabama, Los Angeles, Charleston. Those are just your deep sea water ports. Inland ports, Birmingham, Little Rock, Memphis. I can name them all, where again, the money will come, in this case, from the DOT straight to port authorities. So I don't even think many folks may be thinking about where your local port authority, they're a job creator, right? And at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be making decisions around these contracting decisions that we need to be watching closely, that we need to be ensuring, like, all right, well, who appoints the people to this board? Is it the mayor? Is it the governor? Who are they, right? And I think this ought to activate every state legislative Black caucus. Like, look, y'all have had enough conferences. We've had enough prayer breakfasts. We don't need no more gospel brunches. At this point, we need to know how much money is going to be going to our contractors in these communities and where they're going to be creating these jobs. We don't need any more conferences for this. Everything I'm telling you is on the internet. Internet connectivity is necessary, but we all have smartphones. Like, this is information that's out there, and we expect our elected officials to be following this. So ultimately, like, again, it's out there. The model is there for what kinds of laws we need in place to ensure that there's minority participation. The money is there. Now you got to follow the money. And I think Congress's role at the end of the day is oversight, right? And I think the CBC folks, they understand that, but they got the job done to pass the bill. At this point, it's like a track meet. Like, we're passing the baton on to the mayors, to the county managers, to the county executives, state legislatures.
Why isn't that messaging out? Why am I just hearing it, Jarrod Loadholt? And this is, again, my frustration is that we seem to have a group of people that don't understand how to communicate to the people that they need to communicate these messages to. They don't know how to communicate. Like what you're saying right now, thank you. Now I can move my attention over to something that locally impacts me. And that's what we did the job. We're handing the baton to the next. So contact your mayor, there should be a commercial. Push the button. Let's go. There should be multiple commercials. If you live near a port, if you need infrastructure, this is what you do next. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, to answer the question of why I mean, look, I think a part of it is, and this really got my goat the entire time, was the media reporting on this bill was trash. I mean, and what I mean by that is we had so much back and forth about the horse race, about what Joe Manchin said or didn't say, what Kristen Sinema said or didn't say, what the squad did. I don't care, right?
Do we have media? Do we have media? So there was a story that came out about the Root. The Root.com was just lost. They lost Danielle Belton. They just lost Michael Harriot. They lost a bunch of people because they changed. And this is what the story is saying, because the Root changed from news, Black news, to more entertainment, right? Because that's where the algorithms are. That's where the money resides, right? You know, I know this. I know media a little bit. Those clickbait headlines and then the internet. This is what. So we are what we eat, and as a result, we're getting fed trash. I don't blame the media as much as I blame us, but we are conditioned to click on things that, like, you know, Nick Cannon's penis and things that don't matter. We are more.
But here's the thing, Karen. There was no media outlet that got this right.
Right, because they're not. That's not where the money is.
Yeah.
There's no money in it for them to do something. Like right now, we don't have any calls on this topic, but I know it's important. If I were programming based on calls, which I don't, and I tell all my hosts, the people who call up, we love them, but that is like 1% of the people who listen.
Right.
Anybody that calls up a radio show, most people will say, I'm my first time calling ever. That's the norm.
Yeah.
People who call up every day, that's not the norm. You do not program for who's clicking in. You program for what needs to go out. And I know that there are people sitting in their cars right now or at home, or, you know, they got their earbuds at work and they're like, I didn't know this information before. Thank you for this information. They don't need to call up to co-sign on it. But if we were programming based on clicks right now, I'd be like, Jarrod Loadholt can't come back because we didn't get any calls on this topic. This is
boring. I think for a lot of people, their eyes glaze over, but like, ultimately, when we had a conversation about what this administration is doing, this is it. I think it's a lot more popular to talk about what's not happening. And don't get me wrong. I think if you Black and you pay attention, you're going to be disappointed by a lot, right? All that being said, that doesn't mean that nothing's being done. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of things that are happening. But here's the deal, Karen. That was a 2,000-page bill, and I get paid by my clients to understand what's in it and help them seek out these opportunities, right? How many journalists are going to call through that bill? It's much easier to report on the politics than it is to report on the substance. And I think ultimately people want their bridges to be safer, right? Because if a bridge collapses, God knows nobody wants to be in the car at that time, right? Everybody talks about the potholes on their street. Well, look, we're going to fix them. You go to the airport, it looks terrible. You New York. I mean, look, we're just getting LaGuardia looking like a world-class airport. How long, how bad did LaGuardia and JFK look for years, right?
Yes.
Atlanta, we can never have enough capacity to meet the needs of all the people flying in out of Atlanta every day. So again, these are all things Black people use, right? When we talk about the internet and broadband and all that other stuff, resiliency, there's an entire section in this bill for resilience. What does that even mean, right? Well, flood mitigation, right? How many Black neighborhoods flood every single time there's too much rain?
I live in a flood zone, so I know.
Exactly Birmingham, Alabama, North Birmingham, floods, Jackson, Mississippi, Shreveport. I mean, I can name countless communities where that's the case. There's money, for example, for small and rural disadvantaged water systems. Denmark, South Carolina, 30 minutes from my house, has all kinds of chemicals in their water. Didn't get reported nearly as much, but these are Black people who are drinking dirty water, or have to boil it, or they buy it from Walmart. Imagine you have to buy bathtub water from the grocery store and you got to boil it because the water coming out of your faucet is brown, right? This happens far too much. There's money in this bill to remove lead pipes. Now, will it remove every lead pipe in America? No, but this is the most money we've ever had for lead pipe removal. Again, we ain't talking about that. We're talking
and the construction jobs, because somebody's got to lay the pipe. I said that on purpose.
Somebody's laying the pipe, right? Right. So, but look, I think the conversation for a lot of folks is, well, we ain't had no reparations and we ain't had no student debt cancellation, so they must not be doing anything, right? And I think we've got to move away from that. It's not that these things aren't important, but we've got to actually also understand what is happening. We haven't even started talking about Build Back Better. We haven't even started talking about the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, which has already passed the Senate, made very well past the House in January, will be the largest investment in research and development in the history of this country. And this could be a potential boom for historically Black colleges and universities. I got my Morehouse shirt on today, right? But you have countless HBCUs who have been asking for years for this kind of infusion into their research infrastructure. Well, look, this bill is going to happen. And one of the key players in that bill is Greg Meeks, member of the CBC, Eddie Bernice Johnson, who's chairing the science committee. We like to talk bad about the CBC, but we're not also talking about what they're actually doing. So again, I think we got to get away from kind of the no shade to like WorldStar or some of the
let's shade them and challenge us, because, and I think, for this audience, this is not boring, but it may not be necessary for you to call up. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But again, if you program based on, we used to have a host that, lines would be lit all of the time, because, it's like, women ain't crap. Call me up. 86680. Let me know what you think about the men in your life, blah, blah, blah. So, you're going to get people agitated to call up because it's a hot button topic. But this is important, which requires us to sit in it for a second and just, and the media could do the same thing. They could call up Jarrod Loadholt and find out, because he actually read the whole, how many pages, Jarrod?
About 2,000.
2,000. He read 2,000 pages.
You learn how to went through it. But you know what? Black News Channel calls me. So I'm on Black News Channel. I'm on your show, right? Yes. There are only so many shows I do, and I go to these because I know that the listeners that you have, I listen to your show. I've been listening for years. So I know the audience here, and I know these are folks who care and actually follow up on it.
Okay. Let me just say, I appreciate you doing the work, so we don't have to, and all I have to do is ask questions. And if y'all have questions, you can call him. He's going to be here a few more minutes. 866-801-8255. The lead pipe thing. What else is in here that we should know about?
Man, that I will say. Let me see, because there's a lot in there, right? We talked about water. We talked about wastewater flood mitigation. We talked about air transit, right? Again, we have never had this much money ever spent on transit as we have in this bill. Now, look, who rides the bus? Who's on the train? Now, you go to places like Washington and New York, everybody's riding the train. But when you go to Columbia, South Carolina, that ridership is almost 100% Black for your transit agency. Charlotte, North Carolina, Nashville, places like that, Houston, St. Louis. The folks who are riding in transit are going to be Black. So now we've got money for new buses, bus maintenance facilities, new lines, money for transit. So if you live in the Northeast, like you, Karen, Amtrak, folks ride the train. I lived in New York, I lived in Boston, I lived in DC. That's how people move. Joe Biden's the Amtrak president. Everybody's known about Joe. Well, what Joe Biden actually did do was give Amtrak more money than any president's ever given, right? And that's in this bill. So if you ride Amtrak, this is a good thing for you. There's less delays, right? Because you're going to have newer trains. You're going to have folks going to fix the tracks. The internet's going to be a little bit better while you're in the car. So again, that's in here. Wow. Buses. And again, I can't, we talk trains or
we got bus drivers listening. Shout out to Ian. So cool. I hear you. I see you on here. We have a lot of bus drivers who listen. They probably shouldn't be listening while they ride.
But their transit systems are going to have more money. Their transit systems are going to have more money than they've ever had. More importantly, their transit system got a lot of money through the CARES Act, even before we got to the infrastructure package, because public transit took a hit when COVID, because folks were at home. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we did do, and again, this is a Biden administration accomplishment, they put money into transit, right? Because transit historically in the United States, the fare box does not cover the full cost of operations. So they've subsidized transit in a significant way. So again, that's an accomplishment. Now look, I as someone who does read these things, I'm like, why aren't y'all telling people this? Joe Madison shouldn't have to beg for y'all to come on this show. Right.
That's right.
And I think that's a frustration. A lot of folks like me who supported the vice president, who she'll tell you, I'm a positive that she will be more than willing to have these conversations across America, particularly Black America. But look, Black radio knows how to reach us.
So why aren't they coming?
I don't know. I don't work there. That's the only, I
Okay.
can't.
All right.
That's the one answer
right.
I don't have for you today,
I
Karen.
mean,
I
it's
don't know.
baffling to me. It's baffling, but you want to
I
talk
don't know,
about
Karen.
the time you smoke weed with somebody that is not necessarily going to
Look,
get people out to vote. You just
look.
hurt yourself. All right, 866. I'm still salty over that.
I know.
Just like,
I hear
are you kidding me? And then you'll come on for some drive-by bull crap, but won't have a real conversation. Because what are you afraid of exactly? If you're doing all of these things, have the conversation, let the people know. And that should have been like number one. And then you got built-in ambassadors. You got people who are going to fight for you, not just Reese and other, you're going to have people who are actually going to be in the streets with their fists ready to, not physical fists, their mouth fists.
God together, because I don't know that question.
All right. Just point of clarification. Build Back Better is not the 1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. They're not the same thing. They're different things.
Build Back Better.
What's the difference?
A $1.75 trillion social spending measure, completely separate from all the infrastructure things that we talked about, right? Really quickly.
Has that passed?
No, it passed the House. It's in the Senate.
Okay.
So what we're going to have in the Senate parliamentarian and Joe Manchin are ultimately going to decide what gets to the 50th vote, right? And what's likely to be on the chopping block, there's some immigration provisions, probably won't make it. Paid family leave, obviously we all want that, may not make it. But here's what will be in there. Again, the media reporting has been about what's not going to be in there. Well, let's talk about what's in there. Almost 200 billion, Karen, with a B, for housing, affordable housing construction, right? Now, who fought for this? My former boss, Maxine Waters, who fought tooth and nail to make sure that those dollars got in the bill, right? What does this money do? Build affordable single family housing. There's a first-time homeownership credit in this. This is money for affordable multifamily housing through the Housing Trust Fund. I mean, Section 8 vouchers. Every housing authority in America has a waiting list through around the block every time they open up Section 8 vouchers. Well, this money helps to provide more vouchers. Now, who y'all think in the line, right? Like at the housing authority. We've done this before. So again, Black folks are going to disproportionately benefit from this. But again, the reporting about Build Back Better has been, the progressives don't want this, they don't want this, they don't want that. Yeah, right. This is legislative. That's what it looks like. But at the end of the day, what was in this thing that passed, massive housing, child tax credit, we're going to extend it for another year. How many folks have gotten that additional $300 per kid because of what was in, I want to say, the CARES Act that may have had that child tax credit extension. So again, the child tax credit extension is in here. That's more money in people's pockets. You're expanding the earned income tax credit. Earned income tax. This is why Black folks, when they file their taxes, they get that big check. They're like, man, yeah, it didn't come from the sky. If you make under a certain amount of money, usually in that $40,000 to $1,000 range, you make under that, and it decreases as you make more money. This is designed for working people to put more money in their pockets. This bill would extend that, right? We've got money for not only universal pre-K, but childcare. I got 2 kids in this daycare. This thing ain't cheap, right? So these are things that help put money in people's pockets that we ain't really talking about a whole lot. You're going to expand Medicaid in this bill, right? Build Back Better. Where you look in places in the South, your governor didn't expand Medicaid. We got premium support now so people can buy health insurance through the Medicaid program and not depend on some Republican governor who don't want them to have health insurance, right? That's a game changer in places like South Carolina. That's a game changer in places like Mississippi. That's in Build Back Better. You got money for hearing aids. A lot of folks will tell you, if you ever had to buy a hearing aid for your grandma, your auntie, or somebody, those things ain't cheap. This is going to be a benefit now through Medicare that folks are going to be able to buy, right? That's in Build Back Better. There's so much in Build Back Better. I couldn't run through this if you had me for an hour. It's that much stuff in the bill. But again, the media reporting is, well, what's Joe Manchin said today? Well, look, we'll come around to that. We'll get a bill done, but that's legislating, getting to that 50th vote.
Right. Right. And they don't even target Joe Manchin to hold him accountable so that he can actually, not be an impediment to progress. It's just fodder for the clicks and the algorithms and the fake discussions that people had, the outrage that they have on Twitter and other social media platforms.